Back for episode 2 of Move Your Store Online with Dan and John.
And so we had a lot of fun last week, and so we're here to do it again. And we do have all kinds of things we want to talk about, but we thought we'd mix things up right off at the bat. And after last week, and sort of launching this course, not this course, this Facebook group, we had one of the members of the group, Brendon Cordell, reached out and was talking a bit about some of what happened, or some of the pivot that he's done in recent weeks through COVID-19 to launch an online store, and some of the success, and was just thought he had a great story that he'd love to share with more farmers to show. I don't know if I'd say how easy it is, but how it can be done quickly. And John and I thought we'd have him come on and have a conversation.
Yeah, and I can tell you just from the short chat we've had before this session, I mean, he's a dynamic guy, so you guys are really going to enjoy this call.
And yeah, so also we can't see who's out there, so if you want to introduce yourself and say hi, type in comments, ask questions, please do so, and we will we'll listen to them, and we'll answer them. And then after, so we're planning on talking for maybe 15-20 minutes with Brendon, and then we'll move on to John and I have a few things we want to chat about, the two of us. And yeah, does that sound like what the plan is?
Yeah, absolutely. And the general theme of the day today is really taking a look at the costs and the benefits of setting up an online store. Because that's really number 2 concern I'm hearing from farmers is, number 1, is it going to be inconvenient and a bit of a pain in the ass to set up? And number 2, like, oh my God, it's so expensive. And what are the costs? What are the benefits? So that's really what I would love for you guys to get out of this session.
All right, so I'm going to invite Brendon in, and let's get him in here, and he'll be live. So welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
And I'm going to move the screen a little bit for a moment.
And pardon me while I'm just finishing up on a couple of last minute items. We're getting our probably last frost of the season tonight, so I've just been out here buttoning up. Can you hear me? Okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. So welcome to Move Your Farm Store Online. You are officially our first guest. That's a great honor. And we're going to be figuring out how to do an interview.
Perfect. Well, that's all 3 of us probably, because this is only my second one in my life.
Yeah, so maybe to get us started, I'd love to know a bit, like, give us the lay of the land. What's your farm like? Where's it located? How much land are you farming?
So we are right in the heart of Durham County. This is down in North Carolina. So we share the border between Durham and Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It's a couple of university towns adjacent to Raleigh, our capital. And we run a 1-acre market garden. So the typical, although not shaped like many of y'all's up there where you have more open land, about 100-foot beds. But we run them in 50-foot sections, just find it easier to manage. We have a few caterpillar tunnels. I guess it's about 1/6 of an acre undercover, small farm stand, and a farm store that we're building. We are on a main country thoroughfare, so we're blessed with some road frontage and visibility to a lot of the commuter traffic nearby. And yeah, we keep it. We try and keep it real clean and tight and attractive, and so folks that are driving by definitely take notice. And we have some signage on the road frontage to inform some folks as to how they can find us and stuff like that.
And so your farm is named Weaver Acres Farm.
It is.
And you were telling us before we started that it's a historical property that you've taken on also.
It is. So the Weaver family around here settled this land in 1860. 2 of our neighbors are still 4th generation Weavers. We're the first non-Weaver crab tree to live on any of this land in 160 years. Like many old generational farms, land has been sold off. There's now a school next to us where they sold land to the county years ago. It was split amongst the several siblings. Some of the areas that then became divided by newer roads were sold off over the years, and now we're on. We sit on. We have a home site that sits on its own 1 acre parcel, and then we also have the adjacent 3 acres to us, which is a separate parcel. And then within that, we're able to farm about an acre. We're actually slightly over an acre, but I call it a 1 acre market garden. We do have a little orchard space and a small, patch of berries and things like that. But so we're one of 3 homes left on this kind of country block that's now been reduced to the remaining private acreage right here is down to about 15 acres. So we formed the farm really as a way to preserve this land here. Without some sort of economic driver, this land would eventually need to be monetized, probably through development or home construction, something like that. And we just felt like with such a rich heritage here and history in the area, the Weaver name is on markets and streets around here. It would be right to try and preserve as much of this as possible for the next 160 years.
That's quite a good next step. And so you were telling us that a lot of your sales historically, how long has your farm been running actually at this point?
So, and this may come as a surprise to some because of some of what we'll talk about moving forward. This is our second year farming this location. I, however, have a long career that has been in agriculture, horticulture, ornamental work, floriculture. So it's not my first time growing, but it is my first time really running a for-profit market garden. That was a typical restaurants, wholesale, some direct to consumer, the fine dining, the Salanova lettuce and Hackeri turnips kind of market garden.
So this is what you're talking about right now is your marketing before the pivot. So basically you were selling to restaurants, you had a small CSA, the roadside stand, essentially that was it.
Yes, and actually, throughout our first year, all of our direct to consumer was non-CSA. We were doing, just a regular farm stand setup a couple times a week, mostly restaurant sales, a couple of boutique hotels over in Chapel Hill. But the retail crowd was kind of like what we had at the farm stand, or we'd have some box shares that they could just purchase when they wanted. But as a first year farm that's in development and building out infrastructure and starting the whole process, we didn't want to go aggressively after a CSA model, but we knew with our direct to consumer model and our land base that it was definitely a revenue stream that we wanted to put more of our eggs in that basket, if you will, right? So we wanted to ultimately be well diversified in our market streams and not be beholden to restaurants or beholden to CSA or for God's sakes ever do a farmer's market. And my apologies to everybody that does. You guys are, y'all are saints, all of you that work that hard and do those farmers markets, because this is really, we set out to make sure that this could be a direct to consumer model that would draw people to the farm. Otherwise, I don't think we would be able to handle the time and logistics and energy required to be a farmer's market farm. So we definitely just wanted to wait until our second year was getting going and launch our membership, launch our CSA, and know that we had our systems dialed before committing to filling, obligated shares in our first year.
And so So it sounds like he had a good first year, and then you're lining up for probably a similar kind of year, maybe more ambitious. And then about a month ago, everything changed.
Oh yeah. So over the course of the first year, what we discovered, we have a great deal of our own social networks. A couple of us here on farm and that are involved in the project. We have a great deal of connections in the restaurant industry, and with some of our contemporaries who are restaurateurs and chefs and things like that. So it was a very easy market for us to go after, and we're in a really strong market. Like I said, there's two major universities here, the medical centers that accompany them. So there is no shortage of farm to table fine dining, things like that. And it very quickly made sense for us to be producing as many carrots and as much Salanova lettuce as the restaurants would take, because the few hours a week that we did the direct to consumer sales on farm, it really was far more work than the entire week to fulfill the restaurant and wholesale orders. So as we were going through that first year, we knew we were going to continue the direct to consumer. We knew we would have, a small CSA and membership going into year two. But we were also slowly reducing our diversity just to where we could fill enough of that retail business, but really get the lion's share of our revenue from the restaurants for those high value quick turn crops: spinach, arugula, spring mix, Salanova heads, carrots mostly in baby to teenage size, Hackeri turnips, and we just continued to kind of reduce the crops that we were finding we were having a hard time in a push model, or excuse me, in a pull model, which is where your customers come in and they just pull stuff they want off your shelves. You can't make people buy bok choy or Napa cabbage if they don't want it or don't use it. So it was really difficult gauging the consumer's appetite for many different things. So 6 weeks ago, for all intents and purposes, which was really the start of our hungry gap here in the Carolinas, we were a carrot and lettuce farm. And then the COVID-19 and coronavirus news started hitting, and China had been shut down, and there was whispers of things starting to affect the US. And then all of a sudden it was, we had standing orders with restaurants and hotels. We had hotels that were taking 600, 800 heads of lettuce a week, and all of a sudden it was, hey, we're gonna cut our Tuesday delivery down to such and such. And by Friday it was, hey, we don't need today's delivery. And then by the next week, it was, we need to halt all standing orders. And by the end of that week, all of our customers were closed. And we looked around and we had been stacking fields. We had three 16 by 100 unheated tunnels down here in 7B, where we produce greens all winter. We had thousands of heads of lettuce and hundreds of bed feet of carrots in the ground, and we had a lot of our overwintered crops, but we weren't focused on raging out of the hungry gap, servicing 100-person CSA with the kind of diversity that would be required. So 6 weeks ago, we had overwintered onions and strawberries and our fruiting crops started, but limited amounts of stuff that we knew would be ready for spring. We were continuing to direct seed our arugula, spinach, radishes, turnips, just beets on rotation here, just because of how mild our climate is. But obviously with much longer days to maturity that time of year. So as of 4 weeks ago, our sales went from basically being a break-even farm in our first year, which was amazing. Not having to dig into your pocket to make payroll during the first year is amazing, to zero sales in a 7-day period. And we made the decision right then and there, when we as consumers and homeowners went to the store ourselves, and looked around and realized, the shelves were clearing off and things like that. We said, listen, we've got to immediately pivot, and we've got to go after the direct to consumer crowd hard. We've got to get the farm stand reopened, which had been seasonally closed and was due to reopen in April. And mind you, this was the beginning of March, or the first week, right? Second week of March, whenever that was. It's been a blur since, because as you can imagine, I'm sure as many of your viewers realize, to pivot so hard and so quickly to a complete 180 in agriculture is near impossible, because of the planning and crop successions and, days to maturity required for a number of the crops we're growing. We can't just, not everybody's going to take overwintered carrots, Salanova, and radishes. And if you push that on people for the first 3 weeks, your direct to consumer stuff is going to fizzle real quickly. So
So,
yeah.
so when you guys decided to when you decided to pivot, what was the first thought? Like, I guess there's a couple different steps that are going through. One is you just set up an online store, which we're going to talk about shortly, and there was also figuring out who your market was. And what was the order that you went through? Was it kind of figuring out your plan and then figuring out how you're going to get there, the technology, or did you kind of go the other way around?
So very good question. We knew that we needed a farm website, just being a business in 2020. So during the first year, I had asked a local web developer that I know, who does very good work and is very reasonably priced. I said, I'd like to get a few page, a 3 or 4 page website up for the farm. Just something in WordPress, something that's going to be informational, something where people can find us and read about the story. But we didn't intend to do any sort of online sales or commerce. So he had built out a WordPress site that was completely unfinished. It was basically an unpublished placeholder, all of the Latin, if you've ever seen a website template
Yeah.
before you start putting in your content, it's all ipsum lorem, whatever. So you've got to write all that content. You've got to upload your images. 6 weeks ago and 4 weeks, whenever our sales fell to zero, we hadn't even addressed the website. We do have a nice social media presence. People follow us on Instagram around here. We communicate through that and Facebook. But there was no web content. There was no photographs. There was no inventory. There was no plan. It was, we're going to get the CSA launched when we get the CSA launched because we're in a good market. And we had already kind of identified our consumer. So to answer that question, we sort of used a two-prong approach. What we did is we immediately, and I'm a big believer in this, and there's probably a lot of farmers thinking to themselves, it's very expensive or I don't know how to deal with that. We're big believers in, I don't ask web developers to grow their own food, and I can't really be expected to know how to set up my own website. So you're going to have to go with some sort of platform that has a ready-to-use model, or just get on, a local app like Nextdoor, reach out to neighbors or referrals, find a small independent that does this for a living. And you're going to find that very affordably, for whether it's $1,000, $1,500, couple $1,000, you can get a very bare bones, few pages set up. Online commerce is now the norm for many small businesses. So they're going to direct you, whether it's a Shopify or a Wix or a local line, whatever. And I don't know a lot about those platforms, but I know there's a number that can be used. They're going to direct you in like how to do this and how to set it up and how to, convert people from landing on your page to buying your products and things like that. Or you can reach out to a small local independent who can really do the same thing for you without that monthly subscription cost. Because my understanding is that if you're rocking and rolling, Shopify can be $200 or $300 a month. If you make the one-time investment for a couple $1,000s in your website, and then have a small online store and learn how to use the order flow process and understand, what little report you need to generate to then turn it into a spreadsheet for, to fill your orders and things. It's not rocket science. We're not technology people. I don't know if you guys can see, but I'm not 20. And this is my first ever website with an online store and stuff like that. And I just turned to somebody who I've known, I was referred to a long time ago, who does very fair, reasonable work. And he really guided me through the steps that I didn't know or understand. And then he also guided me on how to manage that store, how to go in and change my inventory, how to go in and change my prices if I wanted to, how to, pull up those reports. And then, so that was the one prong. And then at the same time, we started putting out on social media, hey, listen, everyone, we really appreciate you coming out, late summer, fall last year. Obviously, we've been closed for winter and we're heading into the hungry gap. But with everything that's going on, and agriculture being essential service, we really reached out to the community through social media and said, listen, people need to shop and eat right now more than ever. Your local food system is going to be more important than it has been for many years. And if you make local food choices, we'd like to be considered as a local food choice. And here's what we're doing right now, because we are in our hungry gap. We can offer these farmer's choice shares, and here's what we're harvesting now. And if you'd like to buy a bag or buy a box, this is what we have. And by the way, as many of you guys know, from our social media, from talking to us on the farm, we are launching a CSA this year, and we're going to accelerate that process a little bit. We're going to start taking signups now, and we're going to start delivering shares the third week of April. And if you're interested in that, you can find information on the website, you can message us through it, and you can purchase online your entire CSA. And the response was overwhelming. We had people, sharing it. We had people going into our online store. We had sales within 30 minutes of opening the online store, just from people that were reading our social media posts, and then immediately.
That's got to be a rush to have that immediate turnover, that validation.
Oh my goodness. And then to see it start ticking off in such a way that it was like, oh wow, we better get out there and get the jang rolling, because we've got some orders to fill in, 5 weeks or whatever. And not everybody's going to want carrots and kale and lettuce. So, and it really just snowballed from there. We ordered some banners from bannersonthecheap.com, and for $200 we put, we're on a country thoroughfare between Durham and Chapel Hill. We put a couple banners out. We said, hey, local produce, triple rinse lettuce mixes, CSA and membership drive now open. Find us online at weaveracresfarm.com. And I haven't looked at the site's analytics, but on March 28th, we launched our online store. And Daniel, I, of course, know you through your online presence and your speaking and actually your seed business as well, because that's a big interest to me as well also. But, we just went out there and put that out on that country road. I totally lost my train of thought. I had a message or something come across. I'm so sorry. But we were amazed. We opened the store on March 28th, and it just started ticking off orders. So what I was saying is, I don't know you, but I reached out to you because I'm continually learning. I'm always looking for new strategies, new techniques, and with everything that occurred and then the pivot that was necessary, notice we're Facebook friends, Dan. You and I, obviously, that, and saw your bring your farm store online group, and any information, any hints, tips, or wisdom that I can glean or from others or offer to others. That's what it's all about, right? It's you got to have that abundance mindset where we're out here sharing information. And I reached out to you and said, hey, listen, I know we don't, we haven't worked together one-on-one, but I've had to make this rapid pivot. We've had an extraordinary response, and I shared with you some screenshots directly from the dashboard of our online store, and said, listen, if you're dealing with people who are questioning whether or not they should do this, or is it worth it, or gosh, another couple grand I've got to dump in a website to do this, and what happens when it's over and it's all going to go away. I don't think that should be as big a concern to people as they may think. And if that is the mental hurdle in maybe considering doing this for your farm or your poultry operation or your ranch or what have you, I think the consumer right now is really looking to know where their food is coming from, to eat a nutritious and whole farm diet where possible and when possible. And the response we had was overwhelming. So I've verified some of my numbers by sending that to you, but I'm happy to answer questions or share or anything like that.
Yeah, so Brendon, it sounds like 6 weeks ago you didn't even have a website. 4 weeks later you had a boutique launch, and now 2 weeks later, where are you at? How are sales doing?
They're exceptional. So now, mind you, these sales numbers are not, they're not representative of produce we've delivered to our customers in the last 21 days. So March 28th till now, 20 days, something like that. But when we launched the site, we launched it and said, hey, we have farm memberships available. If you help us by investing in the farm and helping sustain the farm through membership, we're going to offer you a bunch of benefits. And we're in a nice area, and people want a hands-on agricultural experience around here. So we'll have functions on farm for our members. So we also have a CSA there on the membership that you can, or on the website that you can sign up for. We have a weekly harvest box that you can purchase, and we have a few a la carte items that you can purchase, a bag of spinach or a bag of kale, what have you. And the response was overwhelming. So mind you, when I share these numbers, we have been delivering about 100 to 120 harvest shares weekly since launching the site. These are in the preseason to our CSA, so this doesn't include any CSA deliveries. So we're delivering about $3,000 to $3,600 a week via our weekly harvest shares. 100% of them have been ordered through our online store since we opened it. But on top of that, we are still running, and I'm happy to share information with John and Dan so that they can share it to the group. We're running a $2,000 per day revenue stream through our website, and in less than 21 days have crested $40,000 in booked sales through our website for things like our biweekly and our weekly CSA. Now, we're down in 7B, US Zone 7B in the Carolinas. So we offer a 13 and a 26-week share. So these are, this is a $410 to a $760 or $70 purchase. So it does add up quickly. But we, again, right up till current day for harvest bags and our first CSA share that we'll be delivering on Saturday, we're continuing to do $2,000 a day through our online store, the vast majority of which, of course, are CSA and membership signups. But we didn't have a CSA or a website 6 weeks ago. We barely had a website 4 weeks ago. This Saturday, we'll be delivering almost 80 shares to brand new CSA subscribers. These are people who have paid lock, stock, and barrel for either 13 or 26 weeks of produce over the next 6 months. And that is happening on Saturday the 18th. And we didn't even go live on our website until March 28th. We didn't even have our first CSA subscriber until March 29th. And we have almost 80 shares we'll be delivering on Saturday.
So that does sound like quite a pivot. Trying to think what kind of question I should ask you now. So you're working with WordPress, you're working with Woocommerce, and your web developer set up the framework that you're working with, and then kind of trained you into setting it up, or trained you how to use it, and then you imported your products and your pictures and all that, or did you get him to do that, or them to do that?
So the initial tranche, I had them do that, and I asked them how they wanted that stuff. And for the most part, they just wanted an alphabetized spreadsheet with, a description, a price, and then, a document full of photographs or an attachment full of photographs accompanying that spreadsheet. And you can pull up the website. There's not a lot of products on there, but we do have, a very good market right in our backyard. So we're doing a large amount of transplants for the spring, and those are selling like hotcakes through our website, because in order to capture the consumer, what we wanted to do was grow over 50 types of rare heirloom and artisan tomatoes, because everybody wants to put a tomato in their yard. So we use that as a marketing strategy. If you go to our website, there's over 60 or 70 types of tomatoes that you can purchase from our online store. We have beautiful transplants. You order online, you come out, they're ready to purchase. Things that we grow, we also grow for the consumer. So if you want a Big Dina transplant and you want to pay $8 for it, not a grafted one, you can come out here and buy Big Dina. You can buy, the Lucky Tigers, and you can buy the most obscure Russian heirlooms, and you can buy, determinates and indeterminates and cherries. I mean, it's extensive, and having those things available to the consumer, and finding those little niches that bring in a huge head count. Everybody wants to grow tomatoes if they grow a garden or have a pot on their patio, but they don't want to go and shop at Lowe's for that stuff right now. So we said, let's use the tomato transplants to bring more people in and engage them and make them interested in what we have here and show them the dozen varieties that would be coming in their CSA box. And that's been really effective.
So basically, you're using the tomato sales as a lead magnet, what they would call a lead magnet in the online marketing world. It's a small cost item or free item that you're using to bring people in and gather their emails so that you'll be able to market to them later.
Oh, yeah. And not only that, but I mean, people are coming in directly just to buy plant. We get plant orders through the website every day, and people are buying like Johnny's varieties like Apero and stuff like that and paying $8 for a cherry tomato plant because it has the beautiful Johnny's description and talks about foliar disease resistant and it's a cherry and a grape cross. And I literally have orders that are to be filled for Saturday morning that are nothing but tomato transplants. And they've then sent an email about, hey, curious about your CSA. What kind of tomatoes are you growing? Because we grow a lot of stuff in our garden. And, would it be a good fit for us if we're growing these things? And so, you've got to be prepared to engage that consumer. Definitely the tomatoes we saw as a lead magnet. But we also saw the CSA itself as something of a lead magnet because of the particular times that we're in, right? People are nesting up. People are cooking at home. People are looking at their credit card statements and saying, wow, look at how much money we didn't spend on eating out this month. We should invest in more time at the dinner table together, more opportunities to cook and learn new things. And hey, we've heard so much about, CSAs popping up and look at all these market gardens. And, we're assuming we're talking to people that are already dealing with a customer base that is shopping with, local farms, whether it's via their farmers market or, any number of things. And, if you can reach out and talk to that consumer directly and engage them on social media right now, they're very receptive and they want to know, they want to know more about the distribution chain and who's handling their food and do you have contactless pickup, and they don't want to go to Kroger or Albertsons or whatever and be fighting the crowds or for toilet paper and tomatoes from Mexico anymore. So I think now is the opportunity if there ever was one, and it's not to be predatory in any way. It's not to take advantage of or make money off of a crisis like this. It's that, sustainable agriculture is in everybody's backyard. But yet, 99% of the time, it's us small farmers that's fighting for the table scraps in the world of industrialized agriculture. And now, there's this opportunity for there to be a tidal shift. But we as farmers need to make it as convenient for the consumer as Kroger and Food Lion has done with Instacart. I can place an order on the Kroger app and they'll have it ready for me 4 hours later. I can't do that as a farmer. I want to harvest, 2 or 3 times a week and narrow those pickup times. But the consumer is now used to getting Amazon to deliver their products. Why wouldn't they shop online with somebody whose farm they drive right by?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think that we should transition now. And thank you so much, Brendon, for sharing your experience. And it's really an exciting pivot that you made. I really hope you have a fantastic season with it. And I look forward to hearing more about what happens throughout this as the season. And I hope you share some of it on the Facebook group.
Well, thank you. And I'd just like to say thank you to you and John for having me. And like I said, this is really the small farmer's opportunity to shine. And I hope folks get something out of this or are motivated by it. But it's really been awesome for us to witness really the consumer coming out of the woodwork to support local agriculture. And I think there's an opportunity for farmers everywhere to follow in the model that's, already been outlined by big business for us. So go get them, and I'll be more than happy to share on the Facebook group.
I couldn't agree with more of you.
Guys, thank you so much.
Go for it, John.
Yeah, I just had one last little technical question. Because we're often people wanting to know versus like a monthly subscription Shopify model versus, like you say, getting a local web developer. So I'm curious, how much have you spent so far on getting that boutique up and running in such a short amount of time?
So, and it's probably surprising to hear that websites are, if you find a good local independent web developer who works with small businesses, for the most part, it's really based on how many pages and how much content and stuff like that. So if you just need a home and about, a contact, and then a storefront, you've got like a 4-page site. This is going to sound amazing, and I have not seen my most current invoice from him, but but I would say that the work that I'm expecting to see an invoice for is probably less than or maybe comparable to the first tranche that I've already been billed and paid for. So far, I've been invoiced and paid just over $1,100 to the web developer. I expect I'll probably owe him another $800 to $1,000, all said and done. And then there will be a couple $100 a year in, it's not just the like
Yeah,
$12 for the
maintenance.
domain, like maintenance and security updates, and he hosts it and all that stuff. But everything's very fast, and it's
Yeah.
mobile themed. So if somebody pulls it up on their phone, it looks good and functions well. It's not like these, you order something from Martin's Produce, God love them, out of Pennsylvania, and you can't, you pull up their website on the phone and it looks like a 1998 AOL site. So a local developer can easily put something together for a couple $1,000s that's really going to be a lot more robust, and you're going to own that store and you're going to own that website, and everybody's still going to be subject to credit card processing fees. So if there's any farmers out there that are, I don't want to give up my 2.5 or 3%, we're all giving up 2.5 or 3% somewhere in the chain. We now sell 98% of our marketable produce because we now give the consumer their share of produce. No longer are we seeing things that we have to donate to charity or put in the compost heap because we're waiting for somebody to buy bok choy. If we want to give them a stir fry bag in their CSA, we can push bok choy on them instead of not knowing how much to grow. So the couple few percent that you pay to the credit card processing company, the couple grand you pay to a web developer, we put that much produce in the compost heap last year because it sat out at the farm stand and, by the end of the day wasn't marketable anymore and nobody bought it. So, being able to know what you're selling, harvest only what you've sold, fill shares for people that are willing to accept a farm share and not need a fully customizable box. We have some optionality, radishes or beets. That's our optionality this week. Everything else is chosen by us. So, you know, understand your consumer, give them a little flexibility, make it convenient, give up the couple percent, because on a good week before we were doing $1,200, $1,400 in restaurant sales. That's pretty good for a little 1-acre market garden in winter in its first year. It's paying all of payroll. I'm paying for my seed orders, stuff like that. We're doing $2,000 a day now through our website. And obviously that can't go on every day. We're not going to do $730,000 this year, but we will sell out of our CSA in the next month. We will pre-book 6 figures worth of revenue. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to share figures. We're all farm business owners here. And, I think all the great farmers say it. Sustainable agriculture really starts with a sustainable business. So, I apologize for the waning light, by the way. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm getting closer and closer so I can use the screen light. I know I'm not a movie star, so I apologize to all the viewers.
And so, Brendon, where can people find out more about you?
So we've got a nice presence on Instagram, at Weaver Acres. The website, so that you can kind of see what we got for our couple grand, is www.weaveracresfarm.com. And again, I didn't have to load all those products the first time. I was happy to pay the extra couple $100. I think depending on the market you're in, you're going to find a web developer that works for $50 to $75 an hour, and it's going to take them 30 or 40 hours to punch together a website like this for you. And and you're going to kill it. If you know how to reach your consumer, you've got a few people that follow you on Facebook, steer them into that website and look out. I'll post to the Facebook group like one of our, like a screenshot of a day in our inbox where the orders were pouring in 6 minutes apart and stuff like that. It's ridiculous. So it's been overwhelming, the response, and I hope that more people take advantage of it and have a similar experience.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I know we're getting some good comments. People are excited about the tomatoes, the cucumbers, and wanting to know more about you. So thank you for sharing, and have a fantastic season.
Yeah, you guys do the same. Dan, I'm sure I'll see you on the Facebook groups and stuff. John, great being here with you tonight. Thank you both for having me.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Wow.
So, John, that was our first interview.
Yeah, what a enthusiastic and really, professional and agile business owner there. What a great interview.
And I think that's exciting also, that kind of pivot. And I think this doesn't have to be a unique story. I think that a lot of farmers are at a place right now, and this is not true, it's not unanimous, but a lot of farmers are in a place where there's a lot of demand. And if your traditional sales outlets are drying up, there are people who want to eat and are looking for food that they think is safe and healthy and delicious. And I think there's some great opportunities right now to find a place for local organic agriculture and ecological if you're not certified organic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the perspective he brought about really being attuned to the consumer's needs, right? To take away those barriers to purchasing and just, removing the friction, essentially, removing the friction of like, I'd like to have veggies, but it's a little inconvenient to, oh my God, I can just go online and order myself a weekly box of veggies today.
So do we want to talk a little bit about the costs and benefits of online stores?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take it away. So tell me, Dan, we finished off that conversation with, essentially what I got out of the cost of that kind of a model is a couple $1,000s of web developer to start, and then an ongoing fee for both hosting. But, we all know, website doesn't just take care of itself. Like, there's definitely an ongoing developer fee, that needs to be budgeted in there. So I'd be curious from your perspective as a diehard Shopify fan, how does that compare? What do you see as the sort of comparison of cost at that level?
Well, I think, like all farms are unique, all websites can be unique also. And I think, so it's a bit like comparing apples and oranges, but let's do it anyway. And so with Shopify, you wind up paying a monthly fee. And there's different tiers. There's like a $30 is the basic tier, and you're able to do most stuff with the $30 tier. $80 is kind of like the standard tier, and at $80 you have most of the reporting. You can have 5 users, and then I think maybe it's like a $300 tier is the next one in terms of like the basic 3 Shopify options. There's also like $2,000 a month tiers, but we're not even going to go into that. And I think that for most farms, the $30 or $80 is probably where you're going to want to go. And then you get a 10% discount if you sign up for a year contract, or you get a 20% discount if you sign up for 2-year contracts. And I think a lot of different platforms have similar price breaks. I think they're all aware of each other and they're trying to price it so it's somewhat comparable. So with Shopify, if you're doing 12 months at the basic, it's probably just a little less under 400. I guess that's US dollars. And if you're getting to I don't know what to call it, just the standard Shopify, it's about $900 a year. And so I can see the math of if you were to put $1,500. And Nicole just commented in the Facebook, there's also Shopify Lite for selling via social media. And that's like maybe a $10 option, I think, or an $8 option, and you have a little bit less options. I would probably go for a hosted site on a page rather than going through social media to just control more of what you're experiencing and not having to deal with social media algorithms or changes in the platform. But so we were WordPress users for a long time, for about 3 or 4 years, and we pivoted to Shopify because what I found in our experience, and this is ours, I can't speak for all WooCommerce and WordPress users. There was, a setup fee, and then we needed to maintain. The maintenance fees were higher than we expected, and there were some bugs that came along. Now, our specific store, we were using WPML, which is a plugin that does multilinguals because we're doing English and French, and so it's possible that the number of apps we had made it a buggier site than if we were just going straight up. But when we set up, we were hoping for a one-time fee and then not having a recurring fee. But over the years, like in the 9 or 10 years that we've had online stores, all the web developer fees would have come to the same as paying a fee, a monthly fee, a recurring fee. So I think that they're very similar. They wind up being similar. In one case, you're paying someone else to do it. In the case of Shopify or Square or some of these other platforms, you're going to be able to do it probably yourself. Nicole made another comment about that maybe true. It is. I'm guessing true. It's good to control your website, but Shopify Lite is good for getting online fast for farms with no website. And so I can see that. One thing with a lot of farms, depends what you're selling. If you're just selling a CSA basket and you just have one product, which is the CSA basket, you need a lot less bells and whistles, and you could probably get along, even with a PayPal button. But if you wind up having all your stuff online, it can get, I find the more you're embedding somewhere else, the more it gets a little bit messy, and it's easier to have it all on one page that is designed to be a store. But that's just my perspective.
So Dan, let me just jump in there and ask you. So you were saying in your experience, there's more of a sort of ongoing cost associated to your WordPress e-commerce site. Can you give me a ballpark idea of, when you talk about more, because I'm just sort of trying to compare, the cost over 3 years for these two options.
Well, so if you were so in our case, we use an $80 a year Shopify platform, and so it's winding up about $900 a year. And there's a few plugins that we added also that cost something. So let's say we're paying $1,200 or $1,300 a year. If you were $75 an hour is what Brendon mentioned for a web developer, which doesn't seem ridiculous. And so I got to make sure my math is right. That's about 20 hours of work to that the web developer could do. And if you're doing just that $1,500, and if you're doing and so you can get a lot done in that, but it depends on how much you're willing to do. I guess
my question, Dan, is more about the annual reoccurring costs associated.
Well, just to go back, there's 20 hours there. I guess that's where I was going. Yeah, so there's the 20 hours. And so there are updates that have to happen every year anyway. And that's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. And then there's bugs that appear as like your WordPress version evolves, gets to a new version, and then you need to update your Woocommerce, and then there's another app that comes in, and somewhere along things don't speak to each other, and that's where it can add up. If things are working very smooth, then maybe you don't have these costs. But they just seem to keep coming up. Is what my experience has been. We haven't had a non-buggy site. The Shopify site has actually not been buggy in terms of the actual selling part, which is what you want to work. And we've had some things with other parts of the site, and also. I think that it takes about 3 years for your site to go from being the hottest, most sophisticated thing to starting to feel pretty average to suddenly being a little out of style. And so, within 3 or 4 years, if you're going to have a new site and a new investment, that's another chunk of money you're investing, even if you didn't have problems between those two dates.
Right. So essentially, what I'm just mathing it out sort of roughly here, and I'm seeing that over 3 years that the $80 a month Shopify is coming out to approximately the same cost as the WooCommerce. And like you say, that's my experience too. After 3 years, maybe 4 years, your site, basically needs to be redone anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have a WordPress site that's going on 6 years, and you can tell. But I mean, it still does a job. But the Shopify site, we're updating it more quickly, and even that we probably could invest in some theming and some more work. But it still does the job because it's functional and it doesn't need to be updated. You just got to update your own products, but not the actual technology behind, which is what I like about Shopify. Even though it's not an open source system.
Mm-hmm. Right. So either way, basically what I'm seeing out of this is whether you go, don't choose WooCommerce because you think it's going to be cheaper. Choose that because you believe in open source and maybe you have a little bit of skill and you really want to go down that route for some reason. But other than financials, essentially, that's my takeaway. And I guess I just want to be, clear with the audience of what's my perspective in all this. I've worked a bit with online, a system here in Quebec. We have that's essentially similar to Harvey or something like that. But I don't have any personal experience with Shopify or WooCommerce. So, and I'm starting up a new farm. So I'm actually genuinely intrigued of what is the best option for my, online business. And so checking this out with Dan is really useful. So what I'm getting out of this so far is the WordPress option is not the one to choose just for money. Does that sound?
No, I would not choose it just for money. I think some of there is a certain degree of customization you can do with the WordPress that you can't do with Shopify, and that's really great. But sometimes customization comes with headaches. After 10 years of online stores, I am now looking for as out of the box as possible and as least customization as possible. And so that's kind of really led me to working with Shopify. And I think nowadays, if we were launching right now, I would probably look at Square's platform a little bit more seriously. I might still choose Shopify, but I think Square has a really great online platform too. But in any case, I think that an online store is a great investment to have for your store. Whether you are going with WooCommerce or Shopify or any of the other platforms out there, I think getting online does have a lot of advantages, and the costs can be scary, but I guess it depends on how much you are selling and how much you want to sell. If you're just grossing $5,000 a year, $400 is a huge expense. If you're grossing $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000, that amount gets smaller percentage-wise, and I think it facilitates a lot of things that you wouldn't have otherwise, especially now where customers are looking for ways to have the most hands-off purchasing experience.
Mm-hmm. Right. So bottom line is if you're talking about the $80 a month version or your own WooCommerce site, we're talking about somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, of annualized cost regarding of the option essentially. So,
and I think it can actually be cheaper. I think that for most farmers, the $30 a year, so $400, $30 a month, $400 a year can work. And I haven't fully explored it, but Square does have a really bare bones store that's free. You don't control your domain name, and there's a couple things, but you can have a catalog with products that people choose. So I think that you probably can get a store up and running for less than $500 a year, which you probably spend more than that on all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Right. So from a cost perspective, it seems like a no-brainer. And so, well, first of all, before we move on to benefits, is there something I'm not considering here? Because you tell me $500 a year, I'm like, this is a no-brainer. Is there some other non-monetary costs that people should be aware of as they get into this venture?
So yes, you got to set up the site. That's one of the pieces. And I think that can depend on how technologically sophisticated you are. These systems are somewhat intuitive. If you're familiar with social media and doing other kinds of websites, I think that you can find Shopify works pretty well. I think there's a step that you need to do, and Brendon mentioned kind of getting everything out in a spreadsheet, having all your names, your descriptions, your prices. So there is a step of just getting everything down on paper or digitally that you're going to then import. I think that's actually a pretty good first step anyway, so that you can actually plan out how you're selling your items and how you're going to farm. And so I think that's good to do whether you're going online or not. And then there's the actual launching the store. And for launching the store, at its simplest, you want maybe an about page, and then you want your store. You don't have to have a blog. You don't have to have pictures. You don't have to have all kinds of other things. And basically, when you open your account, you're going to choose a theme, and you can choose some colors if you want. And then you can upload your products, and you can kind of choose how they're going to display. But you can get something fairly simple up quite quickly. And all these platforms have 2-week free trial periods, so you could try a couple to see what you like and see how far you can get before you hit a wall. And then you have a fantastic Facebook group to come and ask a question if you do hit a wall. And there's all kinds of people who want to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, great. So that covers the cost. I mean, I guess the other part of the cost is like he was mentioning around the card fees. Essentially the cost of taking electronic payment. So, what's your experience been around with regards to that?
So, what's great about credit cards is that the payment happens and you don't have to worry about it. You've been paid and you don't have to deposit a check. You don't have to count cash. You don't have to make a deposit in the bank. So it's really nice and easy. It's easy to track for accounting purposes and doing your bookkeeping. Those are the easiest payments for us to reconcile at the end of month and annually. Now it's 3%, and it can be lower, and that's one of the things that some of the different plans will give you on different platforms. They'll give you different rates. I think it can depend what you're selling. So if you're selling a $1,000 item, 3% is going to be $30, and if you sell 10 of those, it's $300. Dealing with the check for that is probably worth the $30 that you're going to save by dealing with that one transaction. But if that same $1,000 was actually $110 sales, dealing with 100 checks or 100 Interact transfers, this can be a real nightmare. And like right now, we're getting about 5 or 6 times the sales on our seed store because people are just buying seeds like crazy. And every day I come in and there's a list. Like we offer the option of paying by credit card or paying by e-transfer. And those e-transfers, like I open my email and then I filter by e-transfer and I just cash them. And it takes a couple minutes for each one, and you gotta do record keeping to make sure you can reconcile it with your books afterwards. And it just takes more time. And then, in the case of with a seed company where we're actually going to mail out the item, the person fulfilling the orders has to put that unpaid order aside, and then once I've cashed the e-transfer, I go and get it and then ship it. And so it just adds more to it. And so if it's a $20 sale and it's going to cost what's like 30 cents plus the 3%, I would just rather have paid that amount. If it's $1,000 sale, I'm like each $30 I save, I'm smiling. And so so I think that when you're dealing a lot of small transactions, I wouldn't worry about the credit cards, and I would just be grateful for all the work that I'm saving.
Right.
So one Nick Stores has left a comment on the page saying one of the costs for us has been just managing how to take those invoices from Shopify and organize it into pick lists, harvest lists, and just managing those customers and orders. And so that is a whole additional thing to take on, is how you're going to manage how you process. And I think we'll definitely be doing more talks about that in our future weeks, but let's address it now also. And I think this is something that when you start, that's one of the things you don't know how to run, and you have to learn how to do, and each farm will be a little bit different based on your outlets. But I think what makes it easier is to know what the end result is. And so to have it so if you're starting, and the end result is, the delivery itself. So you have to clearly have your delivery methods defined so that people are choosing the right place of where it's going to go. And then you're able to sort these invoices by delivery. And so that's kind of like the end goal and going backwards. And then it's different if you're going to a market and you're going to have a bunch of different bags, or if you're delivering something and you're going to be dropping it off at people's houses. One of the things that's made easier for us is that we actually print each of the invoices that we receive. And so that invoice that we get, they get printed, they get triaged by type of outlet. So right now, in terms of the seeds, will be some orders are for potatoes, some orders are for seeds, and then some orders are going to be for transplants. Later in the season, we'll also have orders that are for CSA, and the CSA orders will be divided by drop-off. So actually printing it means that we're not going to lose it. Now, it does mean that trees are being used to do this, but so in the actual creating the orders and then having a pack list to pull the order and then putting that sheet into the box so you can double check it and the customer can see what it is, it makes it really easy to work with. Now, there is another step that Nick alluded to of how do you figure out your pack lists. And so this is a part where some like farm-specific platforms might excel. Something like Harvey, maybe Local-Line. I'm not sure what all these functionalities are. And this is something that Shopify doesn't specifically offer. Now, Shopify can offer reports, and you can export the orders, or you can export a report. And there's some apps that you can use to get more reports. But if you can export it as a CSV file, then you can bring it into the world of spreadsheets. And once you got it in your spreadsheet, you can do anything with it at that point. And we actually do a lot with that. So we use an app called Better Reports, and I can't remember how much it is. It's not a super cheap one, but it lets us create any kind of report we want with any kind of information, and we can get it to schedule to send a file or update a file at whatever frequency we want. So we have it updating every midnight into a Google Drive. And then, so that spreadsheet is just automatically updating based on stuff coming out of the store. And then we can use that and use pivot tables or create other reports to get the information out of it. And that's been really, really helpful. And so we'll export all the orders, and then you can filter them by types, by shipping methods. And then you can different days of pickup or otherwise, and then you can create your pack lists from that if that's what you need.
Right, and you could be using either pivot tables or SumIf for that.
You could use SumIfs for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's a great tip on the Farmer Spreadsheet Academy on YouTube, right, Dan?
There are tons of great tips on that. Yeah, and but I think that what you'll need is you're going to need to have. So for harvest, you need it to be consolidated. You need to know what the total amount is going to each drop off. So if you're harvesting for a Tuesday delivery, you got to harvest the total amount, and then that can be brought somewhere. And then when you're packing, that's where you need to have the individual orders. And so for the harvest, a pivot table just summing up the total amount. You need 200 heads of lettuce, 100 of this, 100 of that. That's adequate to hand off to your harvest team and get it brought in. And then building the orders is a separate step where that would be brought in, and then you'd have the actual sheets, and you could go through, and depending how many orders you have, it's probably easiest to have your items laid out and having a box and having your sheet and walk down and pull the things that you need, close it, label it any way that you need to be able to be able to identify it. We tend to use masking tape a lot these days, very high tech. And then stack it on a pallet or whatever it's going to be stored on until it gets brought into the van and shipped out.
Right. And so, I think there's two different cases of like, are we packing custom orders where we really need to know, that Joe Bob ordered this, these products, or are we packing standard CSA shares that, weekly Farmer's Choice CSA boxes? in which
Yeah,
case you don't
and
really need to know exactly who ordered what. You just need to make sure you got the right stuff,
right.
the
And
right
so
number.
and totally, totally. And
Hmm.
and in that case, like when you're dealing with actual weekly CSA, I don't know if the online store, so to get the registrations, it's great. The online store is less valuable at that point. It's really like after the registrations have been received, it's more in the weekly additional orders that it really shines with an online store.
Right. Or any order that someone can order. Like Brendon, he had the CSA, but he also had a option where you could just order a one-off box, right? That you didn't
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
subscribe to. So that would be useful. And I guess one other thought that's sort of coming through while we're talking about customizable shares, or even if you have different standard share sizes, is making sure that the pallet going into the cold room is getting packed into the right order, so that when you load the truck, it's in the right order for delivery. And so I think I don't know if you've ever done anything work with these, but there's a number of tools that are route optimizers, because obviously if you only have 10 orders, you can sort of look at Google Maps and figure it out. But if you have more than 10 orders, you need to be running that through a route optimizer where you're importing the addresses. Here we're getting to home delivery option, and that's a whole nother topic. But if that is a criteria, I think it's good to know that is something that exists and is quite affordable. And even there's free versions where you can run lists of addresses, and it'll tell you, okay, this is the most optimal way to run that. So that could help you also determine the pack order if you're doing home deliveries of customized orders, which is really the most complex use scenario I think we could come up with.
Yeah. I wanted to come back to, I'm gonna run away from the home delivery topic. It's one that I don't have a lot of experience with, though we have been looking a lot into it, whether it's an option for this summer, and I don't know what we're going to do in the end. But I
Well, you
wanted
know
to
what,
kind of go
Dan? We should get a guest on in the coming weeks who might have some experience with that. We should look
we
around. If
should do
anyone has
that.
any suggestions, please, post it on our Facebook page or just message us. We'd love to have someone who has experience packing custom shares and doing home deliveries.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. One of I just wanted to come back to the online orders and managing orders and managing customers. One thing that I think is really important is also how you fulfill the orders on fulfill, and I guess fulfillment can mean two different things. One, it can be, how you put the stuff in the box and you're going to get it to the person. But then also from an online store perspective, you'll have your order and it's going to say whether it's paid or not, and then whether it's fulfilled or not. And it's the actual fulfilling on that online store is a really important thing to do, because it's an easy way to filter information, what's been fulfilled and unfulfilled, and what's been paid and unpaid. And so I would and this is something that in the case of a seed order, when we get into the envelope and we print the label, it's easy to say fulfilled. We put it into the box, it's going to go off to the post office. It's clear that it's fulfilled, but it's been more tricky knowing when it's fulfilled, when it's going to a CSA drop off. And so one approach could be, you have your list of all the orders that you're taking, everybody's names, and at the drop off, you get there and you deliver them and check them off, and then maybe a couple people miss, and then it comes back. And then as you go through the list, you can fulfill whoever's picked it up. And then the last ones you don't fulfill because they haven't been dealt with, and you deal with them. And that's one way to do it. But you could also do it that, once you've printed out all your orders for Tuesday, you could just fulfill all of those, and you are now no longer looking at them in the Shopify. And if someone doesn't pick up, maybe you unfulfill, but maybe there's another kind of sequence that goes into tracking that person. And I think that getting the order of when you do each of those steps down to make it optimal for your operation is probably going to save a lot of problems. And it's when you have a lot of loose ends that you're trying to track while also getting new orders in and managing those. That's where the nightmares really begin. And those nightmares aren't very fun.
So it sounds like one of the beginning steps is actually to sit down and to draw out that flow, the process of, what are those steps from order until delivery? And obviously some of those steps we just, as beginners, we just don't know because we've never used an online platform. But at least some of them you could at least start by defining what is that order of sequence that's going to happen.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's something that we will start to define over these next weeks and try to maybe make an infographic.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be great. That'd be great. Great. So I'm noticing that it's 10 past 9. I don't know,
Yeah.
Dan, do you want to keep going on some of these other topics we'd thought of, or should we push that back to next week?
Why don't we kind of wrap it up? And I think we've had a really good run today. Unless there's anything specific that you want to ask as kind of a last question or two.
No, I think right now it's just like, whoa, a lot of information. I'm going to sit down and basically do a chart of the different, uh, those different platforms and who does what. And I'm not making any promises, but when I get that actually finalized, I'll send it out on the group as well.
And I've been putting together a handy, totally biased guide to why I chose Shopify. I know I've shown you a link to it, but I'll probably get that out, I'm hoping, in the next few days. I think getting your online store together, no matter what platform you choose, is better than not having one. And you can jump in and you can benefit it from it almost immediately. As Brendon was mentioning, he got his store going, and within 30 minutes, he had his first order. And we had a similar experience 10 years ago where we had a print catalog for our seeds, and we were doing CSA baskets. And, that's how we sold things. And then we built an online store thinking it'd be a good idea. And we set up the online store. It launched, I think, at midnight. And the next morning I checked my email and there were orders coming in. I didn't even know what orders looked like, and they were coming in. I don't even know how they found us, but it was really validating and energizing to see that right away there was that response. And so if you do already have a social media presence, and if you already have, or a newsletter, and you already have a community that you're working with, and your community could be friends, family, if you're part of a church group, part of a yoga group, any kind of group, this is community that can tap into, and giving them an opportunity to support you will help you be able to support them. Yeah. So
right. So coming back just to sort of wrap it up, if we're talking about costs and benefits, so the costs we're talking about somewhere between whatever $400 and $2,000 per year essentially. There's the cost of the time to set it up and to really think it out ahead of time, and the cost of learning and those errors, mistakes that are going to get made in the beginning. So those would be sort of three categories of costs. And on the benefits side, what I'm hearing is really the convenience for the consumer to be able to just, basically it's bringing our farms into the 21st century and just accepting that this has become the standard of commerce. And so, the benefit is actually, how to say, meeting that new need that has now been created of like convenience, the new habits, right? The new standard of how do people expect to shop, and the benefits is getting those sales. And in the case of restaurants being shut and or farmers markets being shut, I mean, the benefits is clear, is hitting your sales target for this year versus not. So that seems pretty straightforward to me.
You've convinced me.
All right, great. And I wonder also if there isn't a certain benefit of as you speak, I'm hearing a lot of the steps are like systematization of your farm and being really clear and intentional on what's the processes. So I wonder if there's not a sort of secondary benefit that's more intangible of like imposing a certain need to systemify and standardize and define your processes. Has that been your experience, Dan? I know you guys were always into this kind of stuff.
Well, it's been my experience, and it's definitely, I like systems, and I like breaking things down into systems, and I think that the more Cartesian you are to a certain extent in how you plan, the easier it fits in with the online store. But it also makes things easier to break down and how you're going to work. Like being able to, I guess I agree with you. Yes, I like figuring out what it is that you need to do to make the online store work well, and layering that onto your farm is going to create a certain flow through your farm. And it's going to change the way you think some of your products. And it's possible it's a way that some people don't want to think. You just want to throw some seeds in the ground and something grows up, and then you harvest it and you sell it to people. But it does work well into kind of breaking down that flow of, what you actually can sell, what people want, and you start to get data and analytics. That's one thing that's really nice about all the sales that go through the online store. You can track them by total volume, but also by different product, by product type, any ways that you've set stuff, and you can track it in the actual apps. But if you export that information out, you can look at it in all kinds of ways, and it really, really helps you see what people actually want and like, and it helps you plan and function of that. So that's kind of, in addition to the system, that's probably another benefit from it that you'll really see by the second year that you're running this.
Right. So the benefit of having more precise data of like what are we actually harvesting and selling. And it's interesting because it sounds like this could almost, entirely or partially replace harvest records, essentially, like for personal use or certification uses. I mean, I don't want to extend myself too much, but, to the extent that all your product is going through this online store, you're ending up with a really accurate and precise record of what you sold for the year.
I think that for some farms, it could replace harvest records. I think the thing that's missing is a link to a location and space, which, especially if you're certified organic, they might want to know what field things came out of. So there are certain things that it doesn't have, but it does give you, like if you knew you had 10 beds of garlic and you had 1,800 heads of garlic per bed, so that's 18,000 heads, and you could see that you sold 17,400 on your store, I think that might be adequate for your certifier's needs. But you should talk to them before you take that advice. But it might be able to also reduce the complexity of some of your other records because they're like maybe not replace completely, but eliminate some of what you might want to record.
Yeah. Wow. Well, cool. This has been a really interesting conversation, Dan. Thanks a lot.
It's been a great conversation too. Thanks also to you, John, and thank you, Brendon, for contacting us and coming out and sharing with us. We really appreciate it. And if any of you watching out there know of somebody who we should be interviewing and come on about a topic or related to moving your farm store online, please recommend them or have them contact us or contact us directly. You send us a direct message or email. And we'd love to hear that.
Yeah, and that can either be someone who has experience and they'd like to share it with us. That could also be someone who's just in the process of getting it up or has it already up and running and is coming across some challenges and would like an opportunity just to chat over some of those topics.
So I think it's time to say goodnight to all our friends and viewers and to each other. So
yeah. So good night and good luck.
And happy farming. And we'll be back next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we look forward to continue the conversation.
All right. Take care.
Good evening.
Bye.